Welcome to the second episode of Pills and Pounds, brought to you by myself, Sultan. So today we have a great guest on board, Andreas Hansen, one of the more notable members of the FinTwit community, straight out of Denmark, and is a computer scientist. We'll be discussing the stock Unity, the ticker for that is $U, the pros and cons of the stock, and a general bit of market talk as well. As always, this is not financial advice, and please hit that like and subscribe button.
Okay, cool. So I'm not gonna try and introduce you myself. I don't think I'll probably do enough justice to that. So I'll let you sort of kick off, and we'll go from there.
I'm a computer scientist. So I've been into investing for a very long time. So I would say my first investment was I bought some stock in Apple in
Yeah,
uh, in 2009 because I really liked the iPhone. Didn't know much
yeah,
about investing, but I kind of had a feeling that the iPhone was going to be big.
yeah,
And Steve Jobs was pretty cool and stuff. So that went pretty well.
yeah,
Uh, Added to it over time, I got some pretty uh, weird introductions to the stock market by being in Apple because even though the business was doing extremely well, I don't know if you've seen the financials over time, like the
yeah,
revenues and net income is just gone in a straight line, like
yeah,
almost no hiccups. But the stock prices go, it was like have had
yeah, yeah.
some massive dips, and you don't, and it wasn't really clear why. So you begin to doubt your thesis. You begin to think like, well, is it because that of the Chinese phones are gonna take over and there were signs that like Huawei was like getting pretty big in Europe, so you thought
Yeah.
like so you start to get worried and stuff. So unfortunately, I ended up selling my Apple shares back when I don't know, Warren Buffett bought at like $100 a share,
Right.
pre-split, I think. So it was still a
Yeah,
pretty good gain, but
yeah,
uh, so I really started actively investing back then. So that was 2005.
yeah,
Until then, I just owned some Apple shares and
yeah,
some other index funds, pretty much.
yeah,
Uh, but I really started going onto this website called StockTwitch. I don't know if you know it. StockTwits,
yeah, yeah.
led
Stock twits.
by
Yeah, yeah.
Howard Linson,
Linton.
great
Yeah, that's his
Howard
name. Yeah,
Linson. Yeah, and
yeah,
it's pretty fun. Like there's a bunch of like it mostly revolves around trolling and it's
yeah. Pretty much. Yeah,
and and posting weird charts with no like thought behind them, like you're just drawing
yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
some lines and
They'll just
uh,
add like a parabolic line,
yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then
to the top. It's like
and
this
then
is
if
my
you
technical analysis.
and if you draw an arrow pointing up, then yeah, that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
Um, and I mean, technical analysis can work. Like there's research backing that if you can identify an uptrend,
yeah,
then yeah, it's you're probably gonna make money because most trends continue at least for a
yeah,
while. So, not to rag on that, but yeah, ever since that, I've been pretty much actively trading. My holding period isn't actually all that long. I think like 6 months on average. But I really
right,
try to go into every investment with a mindset that if the stock market was to close for like 5 years, then I would be okay like holding this stock. And why I do that because sometimes we get these like really brutal corrections and they really do test your conviction. So if you are in some companies that you don't really know and maybe you were just saw something cool like an article or someone talking about it and it sounded pretty good, But once the tides turn, then it gets pretty difficult to hold on to something if you're in the red, for instance. Like say you
Yeah,
even no matter how good the business is, almost you begin to
yeah,
doubt your thesis. Like maybe you're not that smart. Probably, I don't know. Yeah,
yeah,
we've all been there. So
yeah.
so yeah, that's
So
pretty
yeah.
much it.
Yeah, cool. All right, okay, nice. And then like you mentioned like Apple, you mentioned index funds and stuff like that. When did you sort of start moving away from, I guess, like the big stocks and start going into like the smaller ones? Was it just stock twits that led you down the road to Unity, or
No, I mean, it's just like once you begin trading, like you kind of um, uh, you kind of try to look for some names with some more volatility, uh, just
yeah,
just because those tend to be the ones that have the chance for bigger gains.
yeah,
Um, So I've really been interested in especially the software as a service space for quite a long time, and as well as
right,
the gaming stock space, because you have these really secular trends where they just
yeah,
keep growing every year pretty consistently, since their target markets are so large and expanding. Like everything's moving to the cloud. Uh, People spend more time on video games as opposed to I don't know.
yeah, using
Yeah,
like any other kind of entertainment,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah, as
yeah,
opposed to any
yeah,
other entertainment. And like females have gone into gaming pretty big
yeah.
in the last few years. I think many games, recent games, have player bases where 50% or more are female. I think Roblox is
Oh,
one of
really?
those. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And this new game, Genshin Impact, that I've been tweeting about a little bit. It's like an anime
Yeah,
game. I
yeah.
think the player base is like at least 50% female. So it's
Damn.
the reason why that game is so interesting is mostly because they've made so much money. I think it was the first game to reach 1 billion in revenue. Like it was like 3 months or something. So and that was
Damn.
on iPhone alone. So it's also
Right.
released across every console and every operating system, I
Other
think.
platforms and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's nuts. Yeah, yeah. No, gaming definitely has grown
yeah.
quite a bit, and like I did a bit of research, like just like have some numbers, so for the viewers, I can save them some time. So I like to use Mordor Intelligence. Like I find their like market research pretty good, and
Great.
like their global gaming market, they estimate to be worth around 162 billion in 2020, and they reckon that's going to reach 295 billion by 2026, with a CAGR around 10.5% over that time period. So yeah, it's
That's pretty
massive.
good.
And like you say, yeah, exactly. And like you say, like the mobile gaming side, like with the Genshin gaming, you said that it was what 1 billion within three months, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of just shows like now where previously before it used to just be like the PlayStation, the Xbox, or like PC gaming, buying games on Steam and stuff like that. Now you've just got like all of these huge games that pop up on your phone, and everyone's using them like non-stop because you don't need to be at home to play those kind of games, right? You can just be
Yeah,
playing them
yeah. I think that's a big
wherever.
appeal on the
Yeah,
commute or
exactly. Like,
whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I personally, I'm not like a mobile gamer myself. Like, are you a mobile gamer? Like, do you play games on your phone?
Not really. I just play sometimes, like to demo some games, like to just know
Right,
what's going
just to
on.
see what they're
Like
like.
especially
Yeah,
just if they're like topping the App Store charts, like it's cool to
yeah,
see what
yeah,
the
yeah,
people are interested in. Unless it's like some
yeah,
really gimmicky game, like there are a lot of those.
yeah. No, definitely. Um, cool. Okay, so I guess that like sort of naturally leads us into Unity, given that they've spent like a fair bit of time like developing games, especially on like the mobile side.
Well,
But
yeah,
then you've also
they
got
don't develop games, but yeah, they help
yeah, exactly.
people.
Like help people develop games. Sorry,
Yeah,
my terminology is wrong there.
that's great.
They provide the platform to create
Yeah, yeah,
games on. Yeah, exactly. So we we've seen like their recent sort of rise in stock price, and I think just looking at my numbers right now, I'm just going to pop them up real quick. I had a price to sales for Unity at and this was crazy at the
mm.
time, 189 back in December, and I think that was
189.
at the
I
yeah,
don't
and
think it
that
was
was
that high. I don't think it was like, but maybe it was. Was it really that high? Yeah. At the maybe at the
it
very
was
peak at like
yeah, at
180
the
or
very
something.
peak of yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, yeah.
yeah,
But now it's down to sort of 34,
yeah.
which is great, right?
It's still
Kind of
very
needed.
high. So
Yeah, no, definitely it is. But I think an interesting point that I kind of saw the other day, and I'm gonna try and share my screen here because I wanted to look at some of the Fang stocks, and I think like given sort of Unity's kind of potential to expand in the area.
yeah, let's see.
Okay, so like if we take a look at this is Amazon, going way back all the way to 1997, right?
Right.
And you've got the price to sales ratio on sort of the left and the market cap, and then this is like their share price effectively.
Hmm.
So if we go back to 1997, they were 9.8, they went up to 27.8, and then sort of started drifting back down again.
Yeah.
With a company that's growing so fast, because I think what last quarter, and I've got their shareholder letter up here actually. I think the total numbers were something sort of like, where are we? Yeah, here we go. You can see that continuous growth, and I think it was sort of around was it 43% or something like that? Where are we?
Yeah, that's probably about
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
43% year over year. Yeah, exactly, and 39% over the quarter.
Yeah.
So, like if they can continue that sort of trend, like we're looking at a more reasonable sort of price to sales ratio over time, right? Like we're not.
Yeah.
It's expensive, but still, like if you consider future revenues that could arrive, given that sort of level of growth over the same period of time that we've seen, like from 2020 to 2021,
Yeah, I
reasons
think
for
I
us to
think
expect.
with Unity, the reason that I've been able to just like uh, not ignore the multiple, but a little bit see past it is because all of their optionality that they're actually uh, executing on. So they're
Right.
gonna have like some completely new revenue sources, like kind of come out of nowhere, like without much capex spent, because the
Right.
same core engine, the same core asset that
Yeah.
people use for gaming, it can be almost directly used for all these other industry verticals, or like so like architecture and VR, AR, and yeah, the last one, like even simulations, like if you need to send a rocket into space, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty nice to simulate it first in a computer environment such as Unity, like where you can see what can might go wrong and what not might not go wrong, because it's like instead of just spending 100 million a couple times and it fails, yeah, so computer simulations, I think that will be pretty big.
Yeah.
Might, but all these things are really not contributing a lot of revenue right now, but it
No.
might come over time. So in that way, see it as similar to Nvidia
Yeah.
when they started being able to use their GPUs for machine learning and artificial intelligence, and
Yeah.
that had pretty wide implications for their revenue growth. I remember back then I was actually invested in Nvidia in 2016. The
Right.
multiples were completely insane, and everyone on
Yeah.
Wall Street was going completely crazy.
Yeah.
Um, it didn't make sense. Like, why was this semiconductor company valued like a software company and not just any software company? Like, it was more expensive than the most expensive software companies at the time.
Yeah.
But like suddenly the revenue came. Like people they were doubting Jensen Huang, the CEO of
Yeah.
Nvidia, but he kept repeating the same mantra over and over again about Moore's law coming to an end and more CUDA
And for the
cores.
users, I think like
Yeah.
just sort of explain what Moore's law is.
Yeah, Moore's law is that that we get the same what was it, computer speed doubles every 4 years or something,
Yeah.
because the process nanometer node of where the density of the chips it get when you reduce it, when you cut it in
Yeah.
half, then uh, speed also doubles or something like that. I'm not an expert, but I think that's the gist
Right.
of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No,
when you go
that
for
yeah, that's the gist of it.
40
Yeah.
nanometers to 7 nanometers, that's a pretty big increase in computing power. So yeah,
Yeah.
so because the node has shrunk so much, like we are at 7 nanometers now and going down to 5 and 3, you
Yeah.
can really not make it any smaller than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No.
so that's why GPUs have become the solution for AI and like really heavy computational tasks, because um, there's just no way to make CPUs fast enough. So you need to add more cores, more CPU cores, and do parallel processing to reach the
Sort of compute.
yeah
Yeah.
the compute power
Yeah.
you need for these like massive
Yeah.
data sets.
Yeah. So just going back to
Yeah,
like the
to
Unity
Unity.
side
Yeah,
and like yeah, yeah,
and yeah,
and then like all of the sort of other sort of areas that they could potentially expand in. So because they've got those two arms like mainly that they focus on, right? Like the
yeah,
create and the operate side.
yeah,
And they both did pretty well. Like I think the operate side produced like a 66.8% increase in revs um, year over year. And then the create side, and I'm just going to flip back to the numbers because I've got them right in front of me, were 37% year over year. So like they're doing well on both of them. Seems like with the operate side, that's producing like the larger revenues with like 471.2 million coming from there, and then the create side too. So we'll jump back to that in a second, sort of explain like what they really are, and I guess like what you sort of understand like the key sort of
mm,
product offering is from those. But what was interesting, and I did a bit of research on this because I wanted to sort of see like okay, well, AR VR is not just a gaming thing. Like you
no,
can, like you
no,
say, use it in loads of other areas. So I went on to G2, and what I thought would be a pretty good way of sort of understanding who the potential markets are like immediately was looking at the different sort of users of the platforms that are competitors to Unity, right? And like I know Matterport was popping up as a SPAC, or they're going to come up as a SPAC through the ticker. I think it was at GHVI
yeah,
recently, like Mukund. Yeah, yeah, he mentioned them, and they're also in sort of like the architecture and planning kind of real estate sort of sector. And I thought was pretty interesting here is that 3ds Max Design, which is a competitor to Unity.
mm,
25% of the reviewers of their product are from the architecture and planning area. And
yeah,
then when you look at who the companies are, like you've got small, mid, and enterprise sort of level, um, that kind of shows that there is like a really big market, at least in sort of like the I don't have like a complete number on architecture and planning, but at least a couple of 100 million, if not a few billion,
yeah,
really, to sort of enter and use, like you say, like a low capex sort of strategy to move into that market because they're just going to use the same sort of engine anyway, right?
Yeah, probably, yeah. Like it really lends itself to being easy to use without much
Yeah,
programming experience. Uh,
yeah,
so it should be easy to dive into if you have like experience with 3D design and stuff. And they're also partnered with Autodesk in the AEC space, and they have I think we're Revit, I think that's the name of it, and another one I forgot to Rhino, I think Rhino, and so so they have integrations for all these tools, and which enable people to use real-time 3D to render their their architectural jobs and engineering jobs. So it can and when once you do that and push it into Unity, like you still use the Autodesk tool to like do all the groundwork, right? Create the data,
right,
create the scene, and type in what the basic materials are for the wall, for the concrete, like how it should be constructed. And once it goes into
right,
Unity, because it's integrated now, all this data is not lost. So it stays there, and it can be leveraged. Like for instance, like people can get to try it out on in VR maybe, or like
yeah,
in AR. So it can help builders know where to place uh, certain stuff, or like, and I don't know if you've seen the Microsoft HoloLens, what it is, how it works. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's
That's
very
definitely very
it's
interesting, isn't
very
it?
much used for industrial use cases. It's like a professional tool to help engineers and just people doing construction and stuff um, really know what to do. Um, so I think in the future that could be pretty big. Right, like right now it's really it's not that
Pretty
big.
small.
Yeah, pretty small.
Yeah,
Like Unity's product is called Reflect,
right.
which is like the real-time 3D adaptation of for aimed at the AEC, architecture, engineering, and construction sector. So they already
Yeah,
have some users, some engineer engineering companies
yeah,
that are doing stuff, and you leveraging the engine to like create these virtual tours and really just guide the design. Like I saw some just you did it with a large panel, solar panel farm in Africa, I think.
right.
So they
Some really
used
interesting
Unity
stuff.
to really simulate how the environment was gonna play in, like and calculate how much sun the panels were able to generate if they place them in the right way, because you can simulate the daytime cycle.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah, a
it
lot of space in that kind of area.
yeah so
Yeah,
yeah, it really it's right now it's mostly for like showcasing and simulations.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that definitely does seem like a big sort of area because I guess like I don't really have like a number off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure the building industry itself is probably worth like
Yeah,
billions to if not trillions kind of thing. So even if they can demonstrate like a cost saving of like 5% just because that can prevent like a bad hiccup during like construction,
yeah,
then you've got a big sort of market that you can just bite into, and even if it's a small amount, just on the planning side, because
Or
that's
just
where it
like
really,
help engineers win contracts because they can
yeah,
let people demo them in VR, and like it's more impressive, I guess, to be
yeah,
in.
yeah, exactly. And it kind of shows that you're able to do a bit more of your kind of research on a particular project, because you can say like I've come up with sort of a model that, like you say with the solar farm, right?
Yeah,
Um,
and also
demonstrates like these are the situations that you would sort of face, which
also
is quite
since it's
interesting.
real-time rendering, you don't have to like do like the complete rendering of the scene every time you do a small change. It really
Yeah,
happens in real time. Uh,
yeah,
like rendering like complex 3D scenes, and it's really takes a long time, like in something like 3ds Max, for instance.
yeah. Do you know what? You've got me interested, so I'm gonna see uh, if I can find the total addressable market, because usually it's pretty quick.
Oh, I don't know about that. It's such a nascent market though, but
Okay, cool. So like we've got some idea of like the VR market on its own here. About
mm,
according to this research here, you've got 15.8 billion right now, and then that's gonna grow at a CAGR of 18% to 2028. So we're looking at probably where's the number? No, it doesn't give a number, which is unfortunate. What sucks about these market reports is when you have to, they give you like a little bit of a teaser, and then they're like, okay, well
but
now you need to pay for
it's
it.
just a prediction though. Like what I mean, it looks like just like
Yeah,
almost they're just using like a linear
yeah,
extrapolation. It's like
yeah, yeah. And then they charge like a couple of grand for it, because
I don't know.
I worked at a company called Informer,
Yeah,
which did similar stuff but in the healthcare space. So like I've been the analyst that produces these kinds of reports before.
yeah.
Um,
I think
and yeah, go on.
in the outer years, like, is it really any better than
Is
a
it really
guess?
accurate?
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe
Yeah, I mean,
in
it
the
depends. Or at least in like the healthcare space, it's pretty easy, because right, because
mm,
I've got like proper numbers on what the market is. It's very finite. Like
yeah.
there's good epidemiology, but I guess with the other stuff, probably not so great. But yeah, like so, like moving on from the architecture on the planning side,
Mm,
what I thought was pretty interesting, and I'd like to know what you sort of think about it too, was there's two other arms that I could sort of see Unity kind of helping. So one would be the programmatic ad space, but this is like very far reaching. There's a film with Tom Cruise in it. I can't remember what it's called. And he's walking around and he's just got all of these ads like flying around in front of him. You could call that very futuristic,
yeah.
but you could potentially see an area where, like, if we start developing more and more of this VR tech. I know we had Google Glass a while ago and that didn't really take off back then, but if we get to a point where um, we are all pretty much using like some kind of VR as a wearable,
Yeah.
then that could be a pretty big sort of space. Because right now, I guess all they can target is people playing games with VR, right? With Unity ads.
Yeah, mostly, yeah, or doing like some VR app or AR app that has ads built into it.
Yeah, exactly. So
But
you could have like a free version, and then you monetize that using Unity ads
yeah,
as well.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, that could be something. Like I know that the Unity ads is has been doing pretty well as compared to the main competitors. I think it's AppLovin and Iron Source. I saw some
Right,
report that showed that they had they were third after Google and Facebook,
right.
I think it was in
Oh, it's
in
pretty big numbers there
2020.
then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it went pretty well for them there. But most people that use these ad networks, they diversify across ad networks works, so they send they play their ads on everyone.
right.
So when the general market tide rises, it kind of lifts all the boats.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
it's very competitive market. So it's not like Unity has a like a monopoly or something, but they might have the best data on gamers in particular, since
yeah. Since that's their market, right?
yeah,
Because they
since
like
it's
you don't
yeah
have Facebook or Google in those markets. They're not really there like the same way. Like if you're developing the engine, then you
yeah
must have some sort of code that like looks at telemetry data for all the users
yeah
and what they're doing. And I think like this is where like my sort of ideas that came into it was like, okay, their engine accounted for 71%, and I think you even tweeted about this a while ago,
yeah
um,
it
of the top 1,000 mobile games in Q4, right?
yeah.
So
Which is
big,
insane, right? That means that
yeah,
they help drive, like, how much revenue is that? 71 billion of revenue or something like that goes through Unity
through their
games,
engine,
and they
yeah,
only get how much of that? Like 0.5% perhaps.
yeah, yeah,
So that's really,
yeah,
in gaming, I think there's a lot of room for the take rate to expand.
definitely. So I guess like one thing that so like for everything that I generally sort of like publish or write about or even talk about in general, like I like seeing like the optimist sort of side. So we've spoken about like their revenue growth looks good, like double digit revenue growth and high, or I'd say like mid level double digit revenue growth is always good for a company, and that starts to justify like a double digit kind of price to sales ratio.
Yeah,
And then when you've also got like a large TAM or a large total addressable market, and there isn't a large amount of penetration in that market, then that's also really good. Like you also say, then if they've got other areas where they can cross sell, so cross selling being like moving into other areas with low, I guess, capex costs. So we mentioned
yeah.
the architectural side and the planning side. We mentioned the ads, and then you've also got one of
Simulation.
the other parts. Yeah, the simulation side too. So the self-driving they mentioned in this shareholder letter here, and I'm just gonna go down to that real quick, which was, where are we? Yeah, here we go. So is this the self-driving part? Next generation offense. Yeah, here we go. So they saw growth in both the gaming and new verticals. Our customers turning to Unity to help them create and build everything in RT 3D, from the next generation of office buildings to self-driving cars. And I think this part here is pretty interesting
Mm.
because like you've got the whole video game side, but with self-driving cars, like I never thought that would be their kind of area to sort of simulate, because I guess you could start using that as like the first point and then move to like the real life
Yeah,
kind of pilot schemes that you got with Waymo and stuff, right?
yeah, something like that. I think Mercedes or someone pretty big was trying to catch up with Tesla by running like
Yeah,
these massive simulations of how the car will drive in like different weather environments. So like
right.
Tesla has to wait for it to like become a snowstorm to be able to collect
Yeah.
data. And that's really the difficult part about self-driving. That's driving in
Yeah.
difficult weather environments. Like anyone can drive to make a
Normal environments.
yeah,
Yeah,
when it's
exactly.
sunny and there's nothing, you're just on the highway. That's a pretty easy algorithm you need
Driving
for
there.
that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
once
Yeah.
difficult things happen, like the world is pretty random. Uh,
Yeah.
a
Then
dog
you've got
can
issues.
run in front of a car, and all things can happen. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and you have to account for that.
Yeah.
So simulations, yeah, that should be a big one, and it will go to I think everyone will have to do it in order to reach like level 5 of self-driving. I don't think that
Yeah.
you can just collect enough data by just driving around randomly, and I don't know, I mean, people
That's
people people seem to think that Tesla will have their self-driving feature finished by this year. But I mean, because Elon said so. But I mean, he also said that in 2017
back in
and
2015 and
18. Yeah,
2015 actually.
yeah. But so,
2015.
I mean, I hope he gets it done. But
Don't know if it's gonna happen.
yeah, no guarantees and no money back if
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
if it
Yeah, that's
fails.
that's a pretty worrying um, scenario for him because I know that he jumped out with the FSD side, and it all seemed to be very like well timed considering that Tesla were in that situation where he said we were 2 days away from being bankrupt, right?
Yeah.
And then that's when he released the FSD sort of claim, and then it's just continually gone on like from there. But I still don't see the robotaxis. Where are the robotaxis, right?
Yeah, I mean, but it's a brilliant business tactic because he's able to
Yeah.
get the stock price to spike, and then he can do an offering at like a really
Yeah.
high price, and that's a
Yeah.
really good way to fund your capex spend,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
exactly. And
amazing.
also the stock split too. So like the whole
Yeah,
just because we
yeah.
all yeah, we all like he understands human psychology. Like we pay attention to big numbers. So if you lower the number, then that automatically seems cheaper to me.
Yeah, now it's
Even though
cheap.
the market cap is not. Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, I've just done a 4-to-1 stock split, so now my company is 4 times cheaper. Like
Now
you
I
should
can
invest in it
afford
now,
10
right?
shares instead of just one.
Yeah, yeah, and that makes me more likely to invest.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, I think that, yeah, no, that's an interesting point. I know we're going away from Unity here, but like with retail flows, I think it's accounting for like 29% of total equity flow right now, right?
Which, yeah,
That
yeah.
that is that's a really smart way to do it because without being like too probably pessimistic on like the intelligence of like the individual investor, we just don't have time, like a lot of time, to actually look at this sort of stuff. And also you've got like financial literacy like at I think it was like the same level as like a third world country. I can't remember which country it was. Like the US has the same financial literacy as um, was it Myanmar or Indonesia or something like that? Maybe I'm wrong, but
Wow.
with it really easy to invest. Like now you've got Robinhood, you've got Webull. Like they sort of gamified the platform, so
Yeah.
even option investing is a game now.
Yeah.
Um,
Just you get
makes it really
you
easy.
get prompted with if you want to trade options before
Yeah,
being able to trade stock. Like it's just crazy, right? Because options can
yeah,
give you an implied margin of like 20x or 50x if you buy the
yeah,
OTM options, but people just think it's a game, right? So
yeah, yeah. That just sends a whole another spiral. But that's a topic for
a
another
whole nother day.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna move back a second and go to
Yeah,
the operating margins.
we
So
should talk about
for
the
every
risks as well.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So operating margins wise, and I always love to sort of pay attention to this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna share my screen back again just to make it a bit more visual because everyone loves a graph, right?
Yeah.
Me being a data scientist, I definitely know the power of graphs. So I'm gonna go back to here, and I wanted to bring up this chart in particular. Okay, so riddle me this, right? Like we've got increasing revenue growth,
Hmm.
and one thing that stood out to me was go back to the 2019 Q3. We've got a non-GAAP operating margin increase, I think, of like 21% based on this chart, if I'm reading it right.
Hmm.
And then now it's only sort of like dwindled down to kind of 9%. So we've got revenue growth, which is in the double digits,
Hmm.
but then the non-GAAP operating margin isn't growing as fast. So that to me sort of suggests that their cost of goods sold and their SG&A is increasing, and that for me is a bit of not necessarily a major worry, but I'd like to sort of see like the non-GAAP operating margin, like in terms of growth, continually trying to grow up. I know they sort of have it like the 70, is it 76% margin right now, right?
Yeah, something
Operating
like that.
margins,
Yeah, I think
which
it's
is still really high.
yeah, it's because they're investing so heavily in their what's it called?
Their platforms,
There's SM R&D, right? They're investing
right?
a lot of R&D money in platforms where they aren't really and verticals where they aren't really generating a lot of revenue yet. So so first they need to build like the user base and like VR and AR and all the ones we talked about. And the
Yeah,
revenue comes later. They said that they first they focus on the create part of the business, and then they're gonna
yeah,
focus on the operate part afterwards. And the operate part is the one that's really profitable. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, so it's
yeah. So I guess
definitely
like that.
a risk to the stock price because the numbers are naturally not gonna look very good uh,
Yeah,
in these like years of really heavy investment. Like, but
investment heavy businesses. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly, definitely.
and the
So then I
investments
guess
is
yeah,
mostly not going towards sales and marketing. Most of it is going towards
yeah,
R&D.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I guess to be fair, it's a good thing from a long term point of view. But then when you've got points or issues where you've got like I don't know if you've been paying attention to like sort of like macro events as of late, but
Of course,
with bond
yeah.
yields sort of like being ridiculously low on like the 10-year Treasury, like sub 2%, and they've been going down the whole time. But then there's sort of like a point of like, okay, well you've got like this whole inflation worries that are like peeking through. I don't know if you paid attention to the CPI. So if you've got like the non-core CPI, it's
Yeah, yeah.
actually now at sort of like the 4 to 5%. And for the listeners, CPI is just a gauge of inflation, consumer price index. All it does is just look at a basket of goods from the year before and this year, and then sort of just compares like how, if I was to buy the same basket of goods now, like how much more does it increase by? Um,
Mm.
Breaking it down a little bit more, non-core CPI or core CPI rather eradicates the costs of energy and food, and that um, version of it is actually at around the sort of 4 to 5% margin, which isn't what's being sort of spoken about. Um, so yeah, but just when you account for that, and you've got these really long-term investments, and then people start running these discounted cash flow models, you start running to a bit of a issue, not necessarily from the business perspective, but more of like you say, share price perspective, right?
Yeah, yeah. It can be a problem for the stock price that the cash flows are so far into the future
Yeah,
because
and
$1 today is worth much more than $1 in 10 years.
yeah, exactly, and that's that's literally, I guess that's. But I know there's a couple of other reasons for stock price sort of like falling
Mm.
and whatnot, just like general trends. But you've got like a really big dip right from this $175 a share
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
number over here. So yeah, it's been kind of crazy, but I think we also kind of just need to look at like how much it
but if you also
increased
look at
overnight.
the volumes, uh,
Yeah,
were pretty thin actually
yeah,
once it
there were
was
like literally nothing.
trading that high. It's because the lockup expiration it came sometime in February, I think.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what happened here. Yeah, yeah.
Not just
I
that, there
remember
was also the earnings report wasn't like it
not as good.
wasn't quite good enough.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that generally tends to happen with like these tech firms, right? Like everyone's got like these super high kind of blue sky scenario um,
Yeah,
value view of what's going to happen, and then it doesn't happen,
yeah. In
as soon as
reality,
we're
hits or it's like further out in the future than you really thought.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, exactly. Um, cool. Okay, so one of the other things that I was looking at as well, and as a potential risk, let me just bring it up. Do they have their Q1 losses over here? trying to find it. No, it's not popping up. Oh wait, yeah, no, it was. No, no, it's not that. Let me take a look. Yeah, here it is. Cool. So we're looking at, like I was saying again, like the whole loss from operations, and like you said, like there's been a lot more um, investing in R&D and so on. But these numbers are still kind of worrying when you sort of see like, okay, you've got this huge revenue coming up to here of like 220 million
Hmm.
back from what 123 in 2019, and then the losses are still sort of four times what we had in March 31, right?
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, if you look, it's like it's also because the Create part is really underpriced. Like
Right.
I think it's like $1,200 for a Unity Pro subscription, which is
Right.
pretty low compared
Okay.
to similar software. And the CEO also said that he thinks they could increase the price of the Create
Right.
solution threefold uh, without really losing many subscribers at all.
Threefold.
Yeah, something like that. So it's really underpriced because they're trying
Right.
to go for market share right now.
Rather than
And
sort of like
even
a
though they
proper.
have they have like a really high market share in the overall mobile game space, their market
Yeah.
share within AAA studios is not that great. Like
Right.
Unreal Engine, we haven't even talked about those yet.
No, no, we haven't.
They have a really large market share in AAA titles like huge games and stuff, while Unity is really trailing, especially on console and less so on PC, but on console it's really not very widely
As big.
used.
Yeah. Yeah, because I haven't really heard of like many of the console games that they produce. I think the only one that I really know of is Fall Guys.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, which good, really good game. I had just like moving on a sidetrack. Like I know
Mm.
it's like really simple, whatnot, but I was talking to my mate the other day, and we were just like, I was just like, he was just like, he was just talking about life, getting a bit philosophical and stuff like that, and I was like, he's like, oh, you seem like you got your stuff together and whatnot, and I was like, dude, I don't think anyone does. I think life is like one big game of Fall Guys, to be honest.
Right.
Like you get back up and then you just fall back down and you just sort of repeat the same process
Yeah.
over and over again.
The maker of Fall Guys, actually, going back to that, apropos, Epic Games just bought them out, actually. So Epic
Oh,
Games
really?
now owns Fall Guys,
Right.
which is kind of interesting. I don't know if they plan to move it to Unreal Engine. I don't think so because it's quite an undertaking to to switch
Yeah.
engines. It's
Yeah.
probably the most sticky sort of software there is. That's a game engine.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
try ripping out a game engine and replacing it. It's not just like switching your database, which can be pretty
Nah.
difficult in and of itself.
Already.
But
Yeah.
this is
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
it's like impossible. Like you start over from scratch instead. Or like
Yeah. Because you can't really do the same
no,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's so ingrained. It's so complex a piece of software that yeah, I mean that's another
Yeah.
thing why I like Unity because it's almost like building a game engine, like especially a like general purpose game engine such as Unity or
Right.
Unreal. It's such
Yeah.
a monumental task. It's like similar to like building a Boeing,
Plain.
yeah, Boeing plane or something. It just
Yeah.
it takes a lot of money, a lot of talent, and a lot of time. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's like a really a good a mode in and in itself, right? That it's so difficult
Yeah.
to replicate.
Yeah. No. That. Yeah. No. And I guess like now, when you mention like the whole threefold, like the CEO saying that they can try and uplift their customers to like a threefold on their subscription, it makes a lot more sense
Yeah,
because, like you say, like
because the
then if
numbers,
it's
they're
sticking.
really not, the numbers, let's just be honest, they really don't justify the valuation
Yeah,
as there are currently. Especially also you have the risk with the Apple IDFA. So
yeah,
Apple allows developers to collect user information and do
yeah,
targeted advertising, but that's going away.
yeah,
Um, I don't know, because
yeah,
Apple is like the god of apps and whatever they say
yeah,
is like
yeah,
reality. So if Apple decides that your business model isn't supposed to to work,
work.
or I
Yeah,
don't know, then it just becomes so almost. But it's also gonna hurt all the competitors, right? So
yeah.
Apple Lobin is
It's
probably
like a
gonna
double.
take a big hit as well, and Iron Source, and so it's across the industry. So I saw that Credit Suisse did a model where they expected that Unity's ad revenue was only going to grow like 13 to 16%
Right,
in each quarter
right.
in 2021, which is still pretty good
Okay.
for a business, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
faster than like Nvidia is going to grow. It's probably faster than Microsoft is going to grow, right? But
yeah, yeah,
it's not what people were used to in 2020 with the pandemic. And you
yeah.
also have the pretty tough comps because everyone was at home playing video games. So that's
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
why
exactly.
the shares have taken such a big hit. So
Yeah,
now is the question: is it priced in? Is it a good buying opportunity? I don't know. I don't think the stock's a bargain yet. I think maybe at 75, 65, where it was at the IPO, then you're probably looking at a really something that could be a pretty attractive entry point. But
yeah,
then there's also the thing that Epic Games just got raised cash at a 28 billion valuation, and
right.
private market valuations, they tend to be lower than public market valuations, right? Especially for
Mm.
hyped up companies with bright futures. So that probably also sort of justifies where Unity is trading at.
Yeah, yeah. And to be fair, like just saying that you mentioned Epic Games at 28 billion. The
Yes.
market cap for Unity right now is 26.
Or like, yeah,
So
the enterprise value is 25 something, around 25.
yeah, let me
Right.
take a look actually
Watch
if
it
I've got it open here.
right now. I like to use the enterprise value as it's more telling because it subtracts cash and cash equivalents
Yeah,
and
yeah.
debt as
Trying to
well.
see if Finviz has it.
Accounts for debt.
Does it?
Yeah,
Does it have it?
I can find it. Let's see. I mean, it's a pretty volatile stock, so it changes every
It
day.
doesn't. Yeah,
But it's
yeah.
25.40 billion enterprise value.
That's not bad.
I mean,
That's not bad.
yeah, so it's a 32.3 trailing EV sales, and according to analysts, it's 25.8 EV sales. So it is still one of the more expensive software stocks,
Yeah,
definitely, but it's definitely not CrowdStrike level or Shopify level any longer. Um,
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah. No,
gotten
exactly.
sold off quite a bit, so it's somewhere that's a little bit above Twilio, and right below Atlassian. But they're gonna grow equally as fast as Atlassian.
Yeah,
So
no,
maybe it
definitely.
has
Yeah,
reached
Atlassian's
a
definitely.
level where um, it could be
It's
a
reasonable.
decent, at least relative to the sector.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, definitely. Cool. Okay. Yeah, no, I think that pretty much sort of like covers kind of where it's at. There is one more part though. So you've got like Roblox too, right?
Right. Yeah.
um, and what's Roblox? Let's just compare that to Roblox and see what Roblox kind of have as their numbers. I'm just getting Finviz up. Yeah, so Roblox's market cap is 38 billion. Have you got any EV numbers on Roblox?
Yeah. It's
Because I'm looking
30,
at
39 billion EV.
right. Damn. So
And
for a company that is arguably not as competitive, um,
42.9 trailing EV sales.
yeah. Uh,
24.
what what really sort of like strikes me the most is like the current ratios for some of these firms. It's like they've got quite a lot of debt, um, which like from a macro perspective always plays as a bit of an issue, right?
Mm.
Because if you start seeing um, debt markets dry up a little bit, which I don't necessarily think will happen because we've got so much cash like flying around still, at
Hmm.
least for the kind of short term. But but when they do kind of dry up and rates go up a little bit and whatnot, I do get a little bit worried
Uh,
for some of these firms.
I mean, as long as the firm is growing, then the debt markets tend to not really dry up. Like if you have a sustainable path to profitability, I think I posted about Spotify raising
Yeah,
money at
yeah, yeah.
0% interest. Uh, so so I don't think we're
Still has
there
to pay.
yet at all, actually.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool. No, no, yeah, no. I guess that also makes sense. Um, but we'll see. We'll see how things sort of pan out.
Yeah.
Um, cool, dude. Is there anything else that you kind of wanted to talk about, bring up, or is that pretty much your thoughts on Unity?
Well, I think we could also talk a little bit about Roblox,
Yeah,
which I think is and how it's a bit different. It's like it's completely different, right? It's more of a game, and
yeah,
and the take rate is much higher for Roblox because they take most of the money that developers earn and give it to themselves.
right,
So,
right.
and Apple, of course, let's not forget the 30% Apple tax that every developer has to pay. So that's actually a pretty big, that could be an asymmetrical upside risk for Unity. If Epic Games wins the lawsuit against Apple and makes it so that people can have competing app stores, uh,
Right.
or that would be fantastic for Unity, obviously, because then
Yeah.
people would be allowed to keep all the profits for themselves for the games that they make, uh, and
Yeah.
not have. I mean, it would just be then you wouldn't have to deal with Apple imposing all sorts of restrictions as to which payments you can use and which ads and I don't even know, whatever they might dream up next, right?
It's kind of strange that we like in a world where we like have like antitrust lawsuits and stuff like that, like Google and Apple have managed to like sort of stay under the radar for so long with just basically having the duopoly on the app market.
Yeah,
Um,
it's actually pretty
kind of
pretty
kind of crazy.
ridiculous, right? Like right now, when if you
Yeah.
open the App Store, the Apple Arcade is like front and
Yeah.
center, like free advertising for Apple. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what are those ads gonna cost another company? Like maybe 10 million a day, but since because you're Apple, you can
Yeah.
just cross advertise
Charge whatever you
your
want.
own and give your own developers a leg up, even if the products and the games are pretty shit. Then because they're getting free advertising through the Apple platform, then
Yeah.
I mean, they're probably gonna be a gigantic success and steal market share from smaller developers that don't have the backing of a $2 trillion company behind them.
Yeah, yeah. And have more cash
Yeah,
in reserves than plenty of countries
but I think
do.
that's a
So
problem for like any software company that isn't FANG. Like it's like the struggle
yeah,
between FANG and everyone else. So,
no, it does make
but
it
yeah,
difficult. Uh,
if the take rate for Apple gets reduced, then
yeah,
Unity will have much more room to raise create prices if suddenly the users' revenue go up 50% overnight, for instance, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. So yeah, like moving back to like the Roblox stuff. I'm just gonna throw out some numbers here, and then I guess we can dig into it. So you mentioned like they've got a higher take rate. I will just mention some of the numbers first, and then we can talk about how Unity could potentially benefit if they changed some of their policies. Um, so they ended 2020 with 32.6 million daily active users, 12 million in 2018, and 17.6 million in 2019. So that's pretty like decent CAGR there when you've essentially kind of doubled your numbers from 2008. Well, you have doubled your numbers plus more in 2018, right? Nearly three times. Um, Generated 924 million in sales and closed 2 billion in bookings. But then they still posted a net loss of 253 in 2020, and then generated 524 in operating cash flow. Um, sounds good, uh, but is it is it? I mean, you probably don't need to be a rocket scientist to still think that their current market cap of near enough 40 billion or their EV of 40 billion is not. It just doesn't make sense
Right.
because when you're posting numbers of 924 million in sales, and then you're saying, "Yep, okay, well, we're worth 40 billion." It's just, I'm still not seeing it.
No, no, I'm definitely not. Especially also, there's really a big question as to whether users will stick with Roblox once they grow up, or if they will
Yeah,
go to other games or platforms because they get tired of Roblox. And then, so, is since it's just a game, right? It's been around for a while, but we've seen games come and go. Like back in our day, maybe it was World of Warcraft. I don't know how old you are, but
yeah. World of Warcraft, RuneScape.
yeah, I mean, where's
Yeah,
RuneScape now? Is it as big as it used to be? Probably
probably
just
not.
a
No.
shadow of itself.
Yeah,
So I don't know if Roblox will really be around in 10 years, like or like it will. Oh, I know it will definitely be around, but will it be as big? Will it be as important for future generations of kids as it is for the current generation of kids? And will people stick
yeah,
with it? I have my
yeah. So I
doubts.
think what's interesting with that, like, yeah, you mentioned like the age demographic,
Hmm.
right? Roblox. So I looked at some of their user numbers because that was one thing that I thought about, and I was like, well, um, it looks very kiddie. I definitely wouldn't play it at my age. I probably stick to like the FIFAs and COD and stuff like that instead when I do ever play. But Roblox's daily active users were, in terms of age, under 13 years
Hmm.
old. It was 54%, represented 55% of their total users.
Yeah, and
So
that's also like there's also some another reason why I think that people won't stick with it is because it's just not very fun to hang around a bunch of 13-year-olds once you
yeah,
once you get a little bit older, and they're all probably also
yeah,
people have different interests throughout their different stages of their life, right?
exactly,
What
yeah,
appeals to a 13-year-old or an 8-year-old probably doesn't appeal to a 19-year-old or 25-year-old
yeah,
or so it's just probably gonna
yeah,
stay a platform for just kids forever. I don't know if they can really get around
sure,
that,
yeah.
or if they even should, because if you start to change the platform too much to not be as like kid friendly, then you might start losing the kids, and so you can't really. They want to
Do
be
both.
everything, right, and do both, and at least that's
Yeah.
what they want to sell to their investors so they can get a higher valuation. But like Roblox is gonna be the metaverse that everything is we're all gonna be on Roblox all the time. But I don't know. Nah,
Yeah, no, I
I
don't
don't
see
really
that.
see it.
Um, their user growth actually declined as well
Yeah,
from September 2020. Like it went down by a couple of percent from Sep to October, and then the same
yeah.
again in November 2020. So
But you should
yeah,
watch out for what the following quarters are gonna look like, because they provided a pretty weak guidance for 2021,
yeah,
especially in terms of billing
yeah,
growth. I think it was -2% to 4% billings growth.
right.
And
Yeah, so that's
let's
probably
see if
going to
they're
knock it
even
down.
gonna be able to hit that now that the world reopens and kids aren't at home uh, with their parents all the time.
Yeah, yeah. I think I like probably will set up a short position on Roblox today.
I don't, yeah, on a Saturday, probably not, but
Yeah, when it comes to Monday, I will be in. There was like some other stuff that I'd seen in the market quite recently where we were looking at. I don't know if you watching like the Bloomberg news
yeah,
calls or anything like that. And Ray Dalio has been constantly banging on about hyperinflation being an issue, US dollar
oh man,
potentially.
that guy is always wrong though. Like, as long as I've been doing this, following financial news and Bloomberg and stuff, like if there's one guy that's consistently wrong with his macro calls, it's Ray Dalio. Like, my God.
Yeah, no. So you know what, sometimes I listen to them and I do wonder
He's
like,
very smart though, like you can tell.
yeah,
Of
yeah,
course,
yeah,
like he
yeah.
has
No, definitely.
it's the biggest hedge fund in the world, right?
Yeah, Bridgewater's is the
Bridge
largest hedge fund in the world. Yeah, Bridgewater Associates, and I like his. If anyone hasn't read his book already, please do.
principles, or
Yeah,
what? Yeah.
Principles. Yeah, yeah. It's a bit of a funky format, but it's a good book. Um, uh, yeah. Do you know what? Like I like to like make my own opinion on things like this and stuff like that. And yeah, like don't get me wrong, there are loads of times where people will come up, and especially when it comes to calling a market correction, you generally end up getting timing wrong in terms of people's optimism, right? Because optimism is like a never-ending trait
But
in
just
humans.
what the economy will do, like macroeconomics, it's so difficult to predict.
Yeah,
Like who
yeah,
would have
exactly.
predicted how fast the economy actually rebounded? I remember like when they started doing the stimulus back in March 2020, people were saying like, "Oh, stimulus doesn't work any longer. Like, might as well stop
Yeah,
printing
yeah,
because." But I mean, it did do something.
yeah. So you know, it's interesting you mentioned that, right? Because like if you go back to the 1970s, where like modern monetary theory sort of started with like Milton Friedman,
Oh,
um, that that kind of like that got them out of their stagflationary period back at that
mm,
time, right? And then they did the same thing again in 2008 with the financial crisis. Um, Interestingly enough, I was on a Twitter space with on Akram's Razor
oh
a little while
yeah,
ago, and they were
Akram,
talking about yeah,
it's the
yeah, and they
best.
were talking yeah, and they were talking about how uh, they gave all the money to bankers, and um, the bankers essentially took all that money, helped their banks back up with liquidity, right? And then following on the year on after the financial crisis, they paid themselves um, bonuses that were larger than the previous year. So it's just sort of just like socialist capitalism is like what I like to call it. I don't know if you've got a name for it too,
Yeah, that
but
sounds apt.
Yeah, it's very sort of like, okay, yeah, we can give taxpayers to rich guys, but not to the consumer, because the consumer is too stupid to understand what
That
to
was
do with their
the
money.
big banks, right?
Yeah, yeah,
After they
exactly.
were
So
bailed out by the
by the taxpayer.
I mean, they did pay back the loans eventually, but it
Yeah,
didn't wasn't a good
with
look.
foreclosures that they then created based on loans that they gave out, which were based on subprime loans as well, right? So
Oh no,
you
I
could
mean
argue that,
the loans to the government. I mean, they did
yeah,
pay
but
those back.
where did they generate the cash from, right? Like
Oh,
the
right,
cash
right,
came
right,
from the foreclosures, which
right.
they then rented out to
Oh,
private individuals, and so it's sort of like they made money off us anyway.
yeah. Of course, like that's how they make all their money, isn't it? At
Yeah, yeah.
some way or
And
another.
actually, talking about foul play again, like I don't know if you've been paying attention to like the whole Bill Hwang um,
Right. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Swiss
That
capital.
was very interesting.
Yeah. Um, did you see like uh
He,
where all that Credit Suisse's total return swaps in terms of like size, and how he managed to like even build a position that large was kind of crazy, right? Like with the whole recollateralizing based on profits from Viacom, um, kind of nuts. But what I thought was super interesting, I don't know if you heard about it. Canada, what was it? I think they were called like Canada Pension. I can't remember the name of the firm, but it was a pension scheme. Yeah, Canada Pension Plan. They jumped in on that Viacom trade
mm,
to short squeeze it, and they put in 3 million. They bought 3 million shares of Viacom. So I was just sort of just like, this is crazy. Like even the pension funds are getting it. No, sorry, it wasn't Viacom. It was GSX. GSX. They
yeah.
short squeezed,
GSX.
and they bought 3.3 million shares with GSX, a firm that is essentially a fraud.
Yeah.
It kind of shows you how
Definitely a
broken the
fraud.
system is. You've got pension funds doing it now. This isn't like a hedge fund. This is a pension fund. So
Yeah. I mean, but everyone's just trying to reach the quotas in the investment world, right? So they don't get fired.
yeah, it's that I found really crazy, because I spoke to a guy the other day or a while ago, and he runs a platform where he like sells a subscription and stuff like that, and he said that pensions would never get involved with emerging market firms. And like my thing was like, okay, well, if the US is sort of like reaching a point now where you've got really, really high levels of growth over 2020, it kind of becomes sort of a bit ridiculous for them to want to go in and buy with the large amounts that they have at their disposal at these prices, because it's just too high. So I mentioned emerging markets, and then I remember the GSX, and I just sort of just like I just had to at him straight away, and I was like, dude, please, there you go. Here's your information, and it's also a fraud.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, this Archegos guy, he was like, it's also very weirdly like fundamentalist religious
Yeah.
type of
Catholic
dude.
friend. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was clearly trying to engage in market manipulation. I mean, in order to boost his profits.
Yeah.
Who knows why? I mean, maybe it was just trying to prove that he was the best, like had the best investor in the world or something. Like once you're already a multi billionaire, like why do you take on so much risk still?
Yeah.
Like I think that's the main question so many people are asking. Like I don't want to speculate on his personal life, but maybe I mean
Maybe you needed it.
something must have happened. Like
Yeah. Well, do you know what's interesting, right? So like he runs a family office. And then I found out the other day, and I don't know if this is true because this is from someone mentioning it. I haven't like verified it myself.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, in terms of like legislation for family offices and who can be an incumbent and also associate with a family office, is anyone up to 10 generations prior to the person who actually creates a family office. So
10. Wow.
yeah, yeah. So that's crazy, right? Like, I'm Asian, but maybe like 10 generations back, there
Oh yeah,
were
like Genghis Khan or something. It's like
so
everyone.
yeah, exactly. So like, how many other people am I related to?
Yeah.
But because he ran a $20 billion fund, and people were like, yeah, that's all his own money. But it's like, if that is a legislation, then there's definitely something like dodgy going on there, right? Because you run a genealogy tree, he's probably like related to God knows how many other people in the world. So yeah, maybe they were the ones that were sort of pushing him to be like, dude, like you gotta bring home the goods. Like everyone, these retail investors are making 7 times, 5 times their money.
Yeah, but I think
Like,
it was mostly just arrogance, right? He thought that
yeah,
he was doing something and it couldn't fail, so then it doesn't matter how much risk you take, because if you are so smart, if you have such a high IQ that you can basically just outsmart everyone by like doing these short squeeze strategies, like he probably had some models that showed him that there was like 0.1% probability of this going wrong or something like that. And he just took
do you
it.
know what? I don't think he did have a model like that.
Maybe he
I
does.
genuinely think
Maybe it was just Jesus
he's
take
quite
the
young.
wheel kind of trading, like.
Yeah.
Perhaps, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that was crazy.
Maybe,
But like
yeah.
on the religious side, it is interesting as well, right? Because whenever finance and religion meet, I get skeptical, for obvious reasons. But like, just to sort of like lay out what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
You get the tax benefits of running a religious entity, and I know Kathy Wood is also religious too. So I find the religion aspect, maybe it is genuine, but I don't know. I seem to think, at least, that with him, like, he set up a foundation with what's it called, Mercy and Trust.
Yeah,
Great
I
Grace
didn't
and
really
Mercy
look that
Foundation.
much into it, but it
Yeah,
was.
so he's got a Activities in Grace and Mercy Foundation, non-profit grant-making organisation he founded in 2006. That is based inside the Archegos office. And he has publicly available tax records of the foundation show that it has contributed 79 million to theological seminaries.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I just have a feeling that he's running the books there as well. But it's interesting stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's weird because there's also not a lot of information about it, so all we can do is like speculate about like
Yeah.
why and what the hell just happened. I know
Yeah.
Akram was really interested in knowing why how on earth Viacom and Discovery, like two, I think low beta stocks normally could go on such a crazy run. What would it, like, wait, 10x or 5x, or and then lose half in like a day. But now we have the answer, which is one guy with who made it, was able to game the regulations to get the banks to loan him a lot of money without realizing how much money he was actually how much money he had out in total with all these other banks. So how much was his principal capital leveraged overall? Like 15 times. But I mean, maybe Credit Suisse thought it was only leveraged 2 times or 3 times, but in reality
It was a lot higher.
it was a lot higher than that. So
Yeah.
it's because this family office thing, like, I think nobody had access to his books, and he didn't have to file 13F statements, so nobody had any idea who this guy was, or that he even had that much exposure. Like, maybe people thought he was just running a $5 billion AUM.
Yeah.
So something, I think.
Had his money hidden.
But in reality, it was like 110 billion gross exposure, which has a pretty big effect on the market if you blow up.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you're really
With Credit Suisse losing.
concentrated.
Yeah, Credit Suisse lost, was it 66%, or not lost? They reduced their dividend by 66% now. So
Yeah, they lost 5 billion alone, right?
yeah, lost 5 billion.
So
Yeah,
far,
lost
for
5
what we
billion.
know, maybe the total
Yeah,
losses
yeah,
are even higher. Like it's just absurd. Like how how bad were these banks at managing their risk,
yeah.
and why? Like,
What
yeah,
were you
who
doing?
knows? I
Well,
mean,
think the answer is probably like they didn't have as much revenue from their typical activities that they were usually doing previously, right? And now it's like, okay, well, we need to make that up. How do we make it up? Well, risk manager, like, how far can we take this risk?
yeah,
And she's like, yeah, okay, this is fine. We can do this. And like, took him to that point, right?
yeah.
Probably,
I mean,
probably was.
it's above my pay grade. I mean, I don't have experience working at Goldman, so I don't know how they think. I mean, Goldman was made out the best, but
Yeah. Yeah, but that was just like a ruthless sort of like cutthroat
yeah.
scenario. It was like, okay, yeah, well, we're not going to lose that much money because we can't afford
But
to.
they
So
still lost a lot of money on it. So I mean, they really were they really that good, or
they
were they
just,
just
yeah,
lucky? Maybe they were just lucky. Like might as well have been some other
yeah,
bank that started
found
selling
out first.
first. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah, 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 yeah. I feel like Goldman is one of those firms that likes to, and I find this with a lot of firms. Like I've I've done interviews with like Big Fours and stuff like that, and um, I don't know. I always find like they give everyone gives like an allure of like infallible, like potential. Like they don't make any mistakes, but everyone makes mistakes. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
it's human, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you're doing like the stupid hours, you're definitely going to be making mistakes.
Yeah.
There's no way.
No,
No
everyone
way.
makes mistakes. Like whether you know that it's a mistake first, or whether you take on some trade, and your intentions and your ideas, everything was right, but something unexpected happened. It was still a mistake. You can argue that it wasn't, but I mean, maybe
Yeah.
taking on that much risk in the first place was the mistake.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
But if it goes
Um,
well, if Archegos hasn't blown up, then
yeah.
it wasn't a mistake. Like they'll get a raise, or they'll get a promotion
Yeah.
perhaps, and move to another firm before the blow up happens, and in a more
Yeah.
senior position. So I mean, I think that's what drives these sort of things, right?
Yeah.
That you don't have a personal responsibility once things go wrong.
Yeah.
So it's an asymmetrical upside risk for these guys working at these firms to take on outsized risk. As long as the blow up doesn't happen under your watch, then you're
okay,
good.
yeah. Yeah.
And even
Yeah.
if it
Yeah, I
does, then
agree.
it's not so bad.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, thanks for taking the time to speak to me about Roblox, well, Unity, and
Yeah.
the entire sort of like VR market. I like to sort of like end or the podcast on like a philosophical quote. So for this episode, it's always around money. For this one, it's going to be never get so busy making a living that you forget to make a life.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. I liked it. Well, cool. Thanks again, dude, for your time, and hopefully I'll catch you again on Twitter or maybe another episode.
Yeah, sure thing. Like, was fun.
Thanks, mate.
Definitely.
Cheers. Take care.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. There was like some other stuff that I'd seen in